What is up, everyone? JD here. Hope you're all doing well today. I'm going to be bringing you my top pocket knives of the week. It's going to be everything that I carried from the previous week, a little bit about them, kind of giving you an update in between the initial review and the long-term review, or maybe since the long-term review, since I haven't done another one. First up, I'm going to bring out the Mike Carter Monday carry, and that is going to be the Giant Mouse Ace Grand. This one here is a River Edge exclusive, no longer available, but I still like this knife so much that I recommend even getting the base Mike Carter variant. I believe it comes in LMAX. This one here came in 4E steel. I'm not quite sure if it actually shows it on the blade now that I'm thinking about it, but basically the same as 4V. I think it's Bowler's version and they call it the 4E. It has this smooth burlap micarta. I did recently take it off and go ahead and do a little bit of mineral oil treatment because the rest of the knife had a patina going, but underneath the pocket clip, because my hand doesn't actually ever touch there when I'm holding it, I wasn't getting anything on it. It has a nice full-size grip to it, very comfortable contoured scales, so it has very nice ergos, very comfortable to use, especially if you're holding it and you're breaking down like a bunch of cardboard or something at once. 4E seems to be treated very nicely. It is holding its edge. All I've done is drop it 2 different times, but I've used it multiple times in between those stroppings, and it has remained razor sharp. Looks like it has a very nice factory angle. I'm not quite sure what the angle is, but it also has a beautiful stone wash on there and it works really well. Access to the lock bar was a little tight for me, being that I have larger hands, so I did end up knocking this little notch down right here so that I could get to it from the side. But honestly, if you use it the way that I believe they intended it, is they have this jumped up and your finger to lay on the whole thing, and you can actually just lay it on top and scoot it over. Works really nice. I did recently tune up the lock bar. I was finding that it was sometimes, if I wasn't hitting it right and I was just doing like a normal type of flip, it wasn't coming out. And I also noticed when I was doing that I'm sitting at like 10% lockup. So I am going to probably take it back apart and just lightly sand down the lock bar a little bit just to get it over a tiny bit more, because it's not really moving. I've fidgeted with it a few different days after doing that detent tune, and that I noticed it wasn't coming over very far into the lock bar. And the reason I say that is because if you actually just kind of let it lock up lazily, it will break the lock bar. So I am going to sand that down a little bit. I will do a video showing how I've done that. Now, if you open it with full force, it's not going anywhere, but it's just a little close for me. I'd like to get that lock up at about 20%, and I'm going to use something flat to support the sandpaper that I'm going to use, and I'm going to do a very light grit and just check it as I go. So it's going to be a lot of assembling and disassembling, but I'll at least show the process so that you can get to where it repeats. The thumb hole, or the opening hole, whatever you want to call that, on this knife is really nice. Great size, nice and sharp so that you catch your thumb without it actually wanting to scrape away any type of meat on the finger. And again, I love the actual looks. It has a really nice blade shape, really great contouring. The handles are done really nicely. Not a big fan of the lanyard hole, but because it's completely out of the way and doesn't prioritize the pocket clip, or prioritize over the pocket clip, it works really good. So this is just a great knife, highly recommendable. I really do like this one a lot. Well, I didn't really realize it, but I might need to back up just a tiny bit, room to where I can lay these all down flat. Let me see here. I actually feel like my angle's a little bit off. There we go. All right, that's better. Moving it along. Tuesday, I did a Titanium Tuesday carry, and that is going to be my AD 20.5. This has the original GOAT shark bite scales on here that I did polish and anodize myself. I also picked up the matching backspacer on here. You can see I did the faded ano, so I have the blue going into the purple, into the bronze, which I think came out really nice for this particular knife. I did that to match the Lynch Northwest deep carry pocket clip that I picked up. I did go ahead and make it a little bit more blue on the tip. It was a darker blue before, and it wasn't really matching the scales. And the scales you can see here along the edges, they have a little bit of that blurple going on. I really like the way that this one came out without it being too dark of a color. I did get the 3V variant here with a very beautiful stonewash on there. I think that looks really good. The 3V seems to be holding up really well. I have not had this as long as my Austin A 8020.5, but I have had this for quite a while and it performs very, very nicely. I also picked up a set of the exclusive 8020.5 Rocket Glides from Skiff. They are performing very well, have broken in nicely. It's nice and smooth, falls shut, and opens really, really well. Very fidgetable. And again, this is what I refer to as a very nice EDC size because I can still get a full 4-finger grip on the knife, even though it's not quite as full size as the Ace Grand. And it has a lot of cutting edge and it performs very well. So I do like this one a little bit smaller and lighter, a little bit more friendly to carry with other gear that I like to carry in the pocket. And then it has a very nice fidget factor to it. Great sounds with the TI too, the titanium, the TI. But it has really good sounds, just sounds really good. And the lock and everything is holding up very well. I do want to pick up some springs. I think I mentioned that potentially in the last carry where I had one of these in the pocket. I just like to carry a couple extra springs just in case. I don't really expect them to fail, and I try to exercise caution whenever I do break these down to do some maintenance, but I think it's always safe to have an extra set. But I really love the way the Anno came out on this one. The shark bite pattern, it is potentially going to shred out on the pocket, but it feels so nice in hand to carry. It feels like it has plenty of grip. I can choke up on the knife pretty comfortably without getting close to that edge. So if I'm choking up to do some detailed work out on the tip of the blade, if I'm doing any type of work like that, works really well. Now with the draw or utility cuts, you do have to come up pretty high. But for me, I'm just kind of already tall, so I'm not like at an uncomfortable angle where my wrist is bent. My wrist is pretty straight. I'm just coming up high on the tip to get to the angle that I need. Definitely my most carried knives are definitely the 8020.5 knives. I've really enjoyed them. They've quickly become my favorite. I know people were a little upset that at the price point you're only getting Austin A, but that Austin A is heat treated correctly. It's in the Taiwan plant, so I think that's the same plant that is doing the Spyderco knives. So they have a lot of experience with their heat treats, and it really honestly performs just as well as like a 14C or a 28 Nitro V, sorry, or in like Nancy 690. I think those are, I think those are blade steels that a lot of people are accustomed to finding on a budget Chinese knife. But again, this one is pretty much like being a US manufacturer, so it is a really good knife. On Wednesday, I went with a Wharncliffe Wednesday carry, and I had brought out the Roxy 3. I hadn't carried it in a couple weeks, and I really wanted to get it back in hand because I really do love this knife a lot. Nice and chunky, very nice ergos, chamfered down very well. Even where you run across this milling here, you can feel it a little bit, but it's not sharp at all. Great lock bar access for a small knife. Very, very smooth. Now, I did also recently tune up the detent on this one because the same thing as I was finding on the Ace Grand is that, and I'm trying to fail it as I speak, if you were hitting it lightly, it wasn't holding the blade in hard enough or strong enough for it to have a snappy release. But now, even now, when I'm just lightly trying to flick it open to fail it, it's holding just enough pressure for it to snap out, which feels really good when you actually are going to just deploy it like normal. And it works with all the deployment methods. That includes the flipper tab as well, or the front flipper tab as well. So I really like the action even more now that I've tuned it to my liking, and the lockup on this one's a lot better. This one's sitting at around 25 to 30% of the stock of the blade, whereas the Ace Grand's not quite there yet, so I do need to fix that up just a little bit. All in all though, this knife really has impressed me. Again, for being such a smaller knife, I can get all 4 fingers in there. I can get comfortably in the finger choil. I do have a little bit of meat that sits up on the top of that because they did this sharpening like Spyderco does, and they left a little bit of space there. It won't be a problem with sharpening it, and it has a a very immediate termination of that plunge grind, so that's going to work well for maintenance. The S35VN on here seems to be done well also. I've only stropped this. I haven't changed the edge angle on this one yet either. I did strop it here recently to touch it up, and it's performing very well. Love the pocket clip. The all blacked out with the bronze hardware accenting it is really nice. And again, on the factory washers, it's ceramic bearings with bronze washers down in there. You might be able to see that right about there. Those work really well. When I find that the action's really nice, I really don't tend to change them out for the Rocket Glides, although I will say the Rocket Glides being a solid casing versus this being a hollowed out casing, it's going to be a little bit better for stability at the pivot. But with certain knives, I'm not really hard using them for that, like I would say this one here. And I did actually change out to, I forgot to mention, to the Rocket Glides here when I did the detent tune, because I do find that I push these a little bit harder, so I like that stability in the pivot. Doesn't make a huge difference to where I notice it, but again, the ceramic bearings versus the steel bearings in here and same here are the reasons that I do like to upgrade to the ceramic bearings from Skiff for those Rocket Glides. I really do like those. All right, on Thursday, I was like, what day are we on? Thursday, I had a thumb stud Thursday carry, and that is going to be my Demco AD20S. Yes, I carried 2 different Demcos this week. That should be a testament to how much I actually really like this design. Again, a little bit bigger, so I have a little bit of extra blade hanging out. Up here, you actually end up with a full forward finger choil. Now, the design of it doesn't protect you from the blade, but when you're out here on the tip, it is pretty secure as long as you have a good grip on here, which this diamond texturing on the G10 is really well done. It is very grippy, but it is not, in my opinion, going to saw away at your jean pocket as you're using it. Again, I did pick up the Lynch Northwest Deep Carry Pocket Clip. This one here, I apologize. This one came with the knife, and then it was just basically the stonewashed variant. I did polish it up, and I'm sorry, my hands are, I've been cleaning them, doing stuff today, so let me try to clean it up so you can get a good look at it. But, and that should be good enough. I did anodize this one myself. I went more bronze here than what you see on the Lynch Northwest that came like that. And then it has the purple, and it goes into the blue, and then a little bit lighter on the tip, but I kept this one a little bit more dark for just a tiny bit of color. Nicely contoured around all the edges, even where it sticks up here, it's chamfered down so it's not sharp at all, and again, fits in the hand very nicely. You can definitely tell it is a much larger knife than the 20.5, and I do like the utility shape of their sheepfoot / shark foot blade. It does have enough of a tip here so you can kind of puncture into whatever it is that you need to break down, and then offers really good positioning even if you need to choke up a little bit to be able to get to that. And again, I can choke up, but I know that I need to keep my finger in nice and tight because it does get really close to that blade's edge. So the stonewash on this is really nice. This one is S45 VN blade steel. You can see it right there. So this one is a newer version than the D2 crew wear versions that are out there. And I know that because the scales that I'm looking at for this indicated they needed to know which blade steel it was to know what size pins they needed to make the holes. So AD20S in the pocket for Thumb Stud Thursday. Really like that knife. As you can see, it is much larger than even what I would constitute the full-sized Ace Grand Biblio. It's just a very big knife. Friday, I went with a Fat Carbon Friday carry, and I broke out the Smock because, again, I haven't carried that or the Roxy in a little while. M4 blade steel, which I really love. I really enjoy this diamond nitrate, I think, coating is what they call it, where you can kind of see the grind lines and everything still through the coating itself, and it has held up pretty well. I don't abuse this knife, but I don't shy away from using it to break down cardboard boxes that I've opened recently. This one here also had steel bearings in the pivot. I went ahead and put the Rocket Glides down in there again. They were caged, fully caged steel bearings in both the AD20.5 and the Smock. I think they were in the Grand also, but I wanted the ceramic, again, no corrosion, rust resistant. And I say that because even though this is a coated M4 blade steel, it is riding against the blade of the knife on the inside, so having steel on steel, I worry about if any moisture gets in there that I do not realize gets in there, that it may corrode. This one here has no jimping on the flipper tab. I think it would have been nice if they could have done a little jimping similar to what was like here so it matched. But honestly, if you put your finger on here and you light switch, works really well. I love the compression lock with the button on it. I don't understand why they haven't just moved to that for all of their knives, because I think it would be hugely, wildly popular. And even if you're left-handed and you wanted to use that, it actually works better, in my opinion, for left-handies or left-handed people, or if you're ambidextrous, to use that. Great blade shape. It has that sheep's foot blade shape with a hollow grind on it that works really well. It's not very thick. It is probably the same thickness as the 80-20.5. As far as the blade stock itself, but they do go to a hollow grind midway through, and it's really thin, so you can get quite a few sharpenings out of there comfortably. I get questions a lot about the fat carbon. There's so many out there now that have fat carbon, camo carbon. There's people that are making it individually. You can go to like Sharp Dress Knives, I think it's Sharp Dress Knives, and RGT that are making them for a bunch of different knives. Now, I don't know if all of them have like the speed hole or lanyard hole delete. I think some of them at least have the speed hole delete, because I think it, just looks better to have that when you're getting something like fat carbon or camo carbon, to have the pattern on there. I think it's just a cleaner look, and I really like this is the jungle wear. Now they have the toxic green, which has the yellow in it, and I'm not a big fan of that, but the jungle wear just has the green highlights in there. And then again, the Lynch Northwest deep carry pocket clip coming in this green, just to kind of accent. It's not an exact match, but I think it accents really nicely. Great action, super fidgetable. I love that the spider hole, even though it is smaller and it doesn't cause the knife to be oddly shaped, works really, really well. And I've not had an issue with the flipper tab. Every once in a while, I might miss it, but that would be because I've deployed it and I'm looking away or something to that nature. But some knives that I've had in the inventory for quite a while, that I hadn't carried in a while, and some that I've gotten here more recently that I've really, really enjoyed, especially that Ace Grand. I don't know why I waited so long to pull the trigger on that. In all honesty, this is definitely one of my favorite knives, and in my mind, it is a keeper. I know I've talked about switching out to the Lynch Northwest clip for this, but I actually have found, because this one's shorter, it doesn't move around, and because it is blacked out to match all the hardware, it doesn't really bother me as much. I still think it cheapens the look of the knife. I think a titanium pocket clip looks better, in my opinion. Even if it's stamped like these three, I think it still looks a little bit better when it's that fold over style. I think it looks a little bit more upscale, but for some reason with this smooth burlap micarta, I really like the way that one looks, so that's the reason that it has stuck around. Anyway, I'm curious, what have you been carrying in your pockets here recently that you've really enjoyed, or that you've picked up and really are enjoying? I'd love to hear that. I love seeing that down in the comments. If you're not subscribed, consider subscribing. I'd love to have you follow along as I grow the channel. Don't forget to leave a like for the video. Thanks to everyone out there that regularly supports and comments. I appreciate each and every one of you. I love you guys. I hope you have a fantastic week. Until next time, peace.